Hi, I must apologize to you all for being late. I was driving here at 90 miles an hour. I couldn't find a parking place. And we had absolutely no idea what people were going to do with these things when we started out. Matter of fact, the two people it was designed for was Woz and myself, because we couldn't afford to buy a computer kit on the market. Worked on a design for about 6 months and decided that we would build our own computer. Woz was up till 4 in the morning for many moons, and we got it working. We showed some of our friends. Immediately, everybody wanted one. That's what we did, and I was out trying to peddle PC boards one day and walked into a byte shop, the first byte shop in Mountain View. And Paul Terrell, the then owner of the byte shop, said he would like to take 50 of these computers. And I saw dollar signs in front of my eyes. But he had one catch, which was that he wanted them fully assembled and tested, ready to go, which is a new twist. So we spent the next 5 days on the phone to distributors and convinced the electronics parts distributors around here to give us about $10,000 worth of parts on thin air, just on enthusiasm. So we got the parts and we built 100 computers and we sold 50 of them for cash and 29 days paid off the distributors. And that's how we got started.
Do you actually believe that every home is, within the short term, the next few years, going to have its own personal computer?
Well, we base our theory on the fact that we make personal computers that can be used irrespective of location. And the home just happens to be one of the locations that the computers are used in. So we foresee Apples being used in homes, but we also foresee them being used in businesses and education, and there's an Apple going up on the first space shuttle, as you may know, to control a biology experiment.
The personal computer boom has been a boom to one company in particular. It has become the Big Apple in this land of high technology. Since the Apple Computer Company was founded 5 years ago, its sales have skyrocketed from about $100,000 to more than $100 million. Stephen Jobs helped build the first Apple computer in his garage. He is now 26 years old and is chairman of the board.
After this process has come to maturity, the effects that it's going to have on society are actually going to far outstrip even those that the petrochemical revolution has had.
Many of us have who really don't understand how computers work or what they do for us or to us, that we are becoming controlled by the computers. Any danger of that happening?
Well, as you know, the product we manufacture, many people see it for the first time and they don't think it's a computer. It's about 12 pounds. You can throw it out the window if the relationship isn't going so well. And I think if you look at sort of the process of the technological revolution that we're all in, it's a process of taking very centralized things and making them very democratic, if you will, very individualized, making them affordable by individuals for a small collection of tasks, if you will, sort of from the passenger train to the Volkswagen.
I have invited here today 3 industry experts to have a panel discussion on software.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Macintosh software dating game.
Software CEOs, could I please ask you to introduce yourselves?
Hi, Fred Gibbons, President of Software Publishing Corporation.
Hi, I'm Mitch Kapor, President of Lotus. We do a product called 123.
My name is Bill Gates. I'm Chairman of Microsoft. And during 1984, Microsoft expects to get half of its revenues from Macintosh software.
Software magnate number 3. When was your first date with Macintosh?
We've been working with the Mac for almost 2 years now. And we put some of our really good people on it.
Well, sorry, Steve, time's up. We'd like to give Steve a few moments to decide today's winner.
Apples are red, IBM's blue. If Mac's going to be the 3rd milestone, I need all of you.
Apple II went on to be the largest selling computer in the history of the world, and still is. But we want to continually bring this experience of using a computer to more and more people.
Lisa was the first in Apple's System 32 family of supermicros that use advanced technology to work the way you do, by sight, instinct, and intuition. With Macintosh, we took the essence of Lisa technology, the same 32-bit microprocessor, integrated software design, pull-down menus, windows and mouse,
And what's so exciting about Macintosh is, while Lisa pioneered this amazing technology, this amazing software technology that makes this possible, with Macintosh we've been able to take that software technology and pull it down into a price range that's going to be affordable not just to the corporation, as Lisa is, but to the individual. It appears IBM wants it all. Apple is perceived to be the only hope to offer IBM a run for its money. Dealers, initially welcoming IBM with open arms, now fear an IBM-dominated and controlled future. They are increasingly and desperately turning back to Apple as the only force that can ensure their future freedom.
6:32 left to play in Super Bowl 18. Raiders 28-9.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification. For the first time in all may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory laws. Unification of the laws is more than people, with one will, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
There have only been two milestone products in our industry: the Apple II in 1977 and the IBM PC in 1981. Today, 1 year after Lisa, we are introducing the third industry milestone product, Macintosh. Many of us have been working on Macintosh for over 2 years now, and it has turned out insanely great.
And we saw why 1984 was like 1944. A fight against all odds, and leading the forces of freedom is Macintosh.
Macintosh is where it's at. We're gonna get the people's ass.
The enemy is here, and here, and here. We shall advance.
General Kapoor said we'd have it, 1, 2, 3, and General Gates gave me his word.
For you, sir, the chief.
General, you and your brave fighting force have a rendezvous with destiny. I am sure your victory will be great. Insanely great.
Go get him.
Let's go, move it!
In 1980, Apple went public as a $118 million company. The following year, IBM entered the new market with its own personal computer, the PC. Industry analysts predicted that Apple, like many other smaller companies, would be forced out of business. But Stephen Jobs, now all of 28 years old and chairman of the board, was not prepared to step aside. Apple's response to the IBM threat was the Macintosh. Jobs wanted his new task force to behave like pirates outside corporate law.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did, but we're not necessarily those seasoned professionals, but who had at the tips of their fingers and in their passion the latest understanding of where technology was and what we could do with that technology.
Finally tonight we focus on an apple. Apple the computer, not the fruit. The once high-flying computer industry is having its trouble.
What Apple is it's an environment where we can attract the best and the brightest people to come together and sort of have a common vision about how we can change the world.
But nationwide sales of the Macintosh and the Apple II have been slow since the first of the year. Despite a small upturn in February, many dealers are stuck with big inventories both in the warehouse and on their shelves. the company has been hit with a wave of top-level resignations. Co-founder Stephen Wozniak, the electronic genius who put the first Apple together in his garage, quit last month.
In the spring of 1985, he lost a power struggle inside Apple and left the company he had created. He spent the summer considering his next move and resolved to begin again. In September, he started a new computer company with his own money. With characteristic flair, he called it Next Incorporated.
And we decided we wanted to start a company that had a lot to do with education, and in particular, higher education, colleges and universities.
In December 1985, in business for just 90 days, Jobs and his 11 employees hold their first retreat. Company retreats like this are the continuation of a tradition Steve established at Apple early on.
More important than building a product, we are in the process of architecting a company. That's like a bomb run. You don't change your target when you're in the bomb run. We are going to make it or break it based on whether we can provide products to higher education and services and relationships to higher education that no one else provides. And I think we ought to spend 100% of our time thinking about that. And if we can't do that, then we ought to go broke. Where are we going to?
3 months later, the company returns to Pebble Beach to hold its second retreat. Progress has been made. The first mock-up of the new computer is in the trunk Steve is carrying. But the flush of excitement that animated the first days of startup has given way to the pressure of solving actual problems in time to meet critical deadlines. The minute Steve begins to deliver his traditional sayings of Chairman Jobs, it becomes clear that the mood of this retreat will be different from the first.
Well, my first saying is that the honeymoon is over. It just seems like we're in this really difficult time where, I don't know, I mean, I sort of think another month's going to go by and there's still not going to be anything running on the sun that's very interesting. And another month will go by and there still won't be anything running.
Money is also emerging as a problem. In return for 70% of the stock, Jobs has committed $7 million of his own money to carry the company to product launch. But at the present burn rate, it appears that that amount will be insufficient.
We just go out and we buy brand new Macintoshes and brand new hard disks for everybody, and it's not at all clear. I don't think we're getting great deals on that stuff. We're not scrounging. One of the things I don't see is, I don't see it myself, I don't see it in enough of the rest of us, is I don't see that startup hustle. In other words, if we zoom out at the big picture, it would be a shame to have lost the war because we won a few battles. And we're not keeping the war in perspective. And the war is called survival. The war is called not run out of money until we get our product on the market.
Hi, I'm Steve Jobs, and I make computers. As humans, we're all tool builders. We create tools that amplify inherent abilities that we have. Tools like the bicycle, telescope, language, mathematics. But the neatest tool we've ever created is the computer. And until now, computers have been used to revolutionize science and industry. But the great news for 1988 is that computers have finally gotten powerful enough to have the same impact in the arts and the humanities.
I think one of the things that really separates us from the high primates is that we're tool builders. And I read a study that measured the efficiency of locomotion for various species on the planet. The condor used the least energy to move a kilometer. And humans came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. It was not too proud of a showing for the crown of creation. So that didn't look so good, but then somebody at Scientific American had the insight to test the efficiency of locomotion for a man on a bicycle. And a man on a bicycle, or a human on a bicycle, blew the condor away, completely off the top of the charts. And that's what a computer is to me. What a computer is to me is, it's the most remarkable tool that we've ever come up with. And it's the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds. All the work that I have done, this is a very strange business and a very strange endeavor of life. All the work that I have done in my life will be obsolete by the time I'm 50. Apple II's obsolete now. Apple I's were obsolete many years ago. This is a field where one does not write a Principia which holds up for 200 years. This is not a field where one paints a painting that will be looked at for centuries, or builds a church that will be
admired and, looked at in astonishment for centuries. No, this is a field where one does one's work, and in 10 years it's obsolete, and really will not be usable within 10 or 20 years. I mean, you can't go back and use an Apple I because there's no software for it. In another 10 years or so, you won't be able to use an Apple II. You won't even be able to fire it up and see what it was like. No, I've actually always found something to be very true, which is most people don't get those experiences because they never ask. I've never found anybody that didn't want to help me if I asked them for help. I always call them up. I called up, this will date me, but I called up Bill Hewlett when I was 12 years old, and he lived in Palo Alto. His number was still in the phone book. And he answered the phone himself. He said, yes? He said, hi, I'm Steve Jobs. I'm 12 years old. I'm a student in high school, and I want to build a frequency counter. And I was wondering if you had any spare parts I could have. And he laughed, and he gave me the spare parts to build this frequency counter, and he gave me a job that summer in Hewlett-Packard, working on the assembly line, putting nuts and bolts together on frequency counters. He got me a job in the place that built them. And I was in heaven. And I've never found anyone who said no or hung up the phone when I called. I just asked. Most people never pick up the phone and call. Most people never ask. And that's what separates sometimes the people that do things from the people that just dream about them. And that brings us to 1995. In 1995, the centenary year of the invention of the motion picture itself, we have another major milestone, something I think will go down as a landmark in motion picture history, and that is the first completely computer-generated feature-length motion picture, completely computer-synthetic, on the 100th anniversary of the motion picture itself, and that, of course, is Toy Story. Toy Story represents the computer graphics community contributing not just special effects to a motion picture, but the entire motion picture itself. It's a breakthrough on the scale of Technicolor, Snow White, and Star Wars. It is way beyond what we've seen in computer graphics special effects.
Toy Story made history last year as the first computer-generated full-length feature film. Its technology and success have revolutionized the business of animation and opened the door to endless possibility between Hollywood and the Silicon Valley.
It takes us 4 years to make these films, and we'll get them out more frequently by overlapping them, but 4 years is a pretty big investment in these things. But when it works, it can be phenomenal. Snow White is 60 years old. Who do you know that hasn't seen Snow White? I know people on most continents, and I don't think I know one person that hasn't seen Snow White. So the ability for these things to live for 60 or even 100 years is amazing, and that's very different than the technology world that I've come from. Most of the technology products we do, Apple IIs, Macintoshes, you name it, they tend
obsolete in 18 months, and it's shrinking to 6 months fast.
You're lucky if they live 10 to 15 years. I mean, it's a very rare exception. So, and then they become sort of part of the sediment layer for things to build upon. These things can live for 100 years, and so it's very different. And we're not competing against, a Microsoft or another company. We're competing against, can we make a great film that people love? That's what we compete against.
You first came to public attention with Apple. Mm-hmm. In recent weeks, it's been one of the failure stories of Wall Street, and indeed of the American economy. What went wrong at Apple?
Oh, gosh. Apple, I haven't been there in a long time, but my perception is...
We won't blame you for what's happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, my perception may not be complete, but from the way I see it, Apple was a company that was based on innovation. When I left Apple 10 years ago, we were 10 years ahead of anybody else. It took Microsoft 10 years to copy Windows. The problem was that Apple stood still. Even though it invested cumulatively billions in R&D, the output has not been there, and people have caught up with it, and its differentiation has eroded, in particular with respect to Microsoft. And so the way out for Apple, and I still think Apple has a future. There's some awfully good people there, and there's a tremendous brand loyalty to that company. I think the way out is not to slash and burn, it's to innovate. That's how Apple got to its glory, and I think that's how Apple could return to it. Right? Apple's sales in 1995 were 11.1 billion. In 96 they were 9.5 billion, and in this year they'll be, 7 billion plus or minus a little bit. That's the problem, or the symptom, depending on how you look at it. And that needs to be
stabilized and turned around, and people are working very hard to do that. So what are some beginning steps that we're going to take? One of the first ones has to be to start at the top. Apple's done a lot of change at the bottom, and I think this change needs to start at the top with the board of directors. Focus on relevance. Apple needs to find where it is still incredibly relevant and focus on those areas. And lastly, I am joining the board as well. During the last several weeks, we have looked at some of the relationships, and one has stood out as a relationship that hasn't been going so well, but had the potential, I think, to be great for both companies. And I'd like to announce one of our first partnerships today, a very, very meaningful one, and that is one with Microsoft.
That I've done in my career has been the work that I've done with Steve on the Macintosh. Whether it's the first introduction or doing products like Mac Excel, these have been major milestones. And it's very exciting to renew our commitment to the Macintosh.
I think if we want Microsoft Office on the Mac, we better treat the company that puts it out with a little bit of gratitude. We'd like their software. So, the era of setting this up as a competition between Apple and Microsoft is over as far as I'm concerned. This is about getting Apple healthy, and this is about Apple being able to make incredibly great contributions to the industry to get healthy and prosper again. Good morning. We were up till 3 o'clock last night finishing this advertising up, and I want to show it to you in a minute, see what you think of it. I've been back about 8 to 10 weeks, and we've been working really hard. And what we're trying to do is not something really highfalutin. We're trying to get back to the basics. We're trying to get back to the basics of great products, great marketing, and great distribution. And I think that Apple has pockets of greatness, but in some ways has drifted away from doing the basics really well. So we started with the product line. We looked at the product roadmap going out for a few years, and we said a lot of this doesn't make sense. And it's way too much stuff, and there's not enough focus. And so we actually got rid of 70% of the stuff on the product roadmap. I mean, I couldn't even figure out the damn product line after a few weeks. I kept saying, well, what is this model? How does this fit? And I started talking to customers, and they couldn't figure it out either. And so you're going to see the product line get much simpler, and you're going to see the product line get much better. What we're about isn't making boxes for people to get their jobs done, although we do that well. We do that better than almost anybody in some cases. But Apple's about something more than that. Apple, at the core, its core value, is that we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. That's what we believe. And that those people that are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that actually do. And so what we're going to do in our first brand marketing campaign in several years is to get back to that core value. A lot of things have changed. The market's a totally different place than it was a decade ago. And Apple's totally different, and Apple's place in it is totally different. And believe me, the products and the distribution strategy and the manufacturing are totally different, and we understand that. What we have is something that I am very moved by. It honors those people who have changed the world. Some of them are living, some of them are not. But the ones that aren't, as you'll see, you know that if they'd ever used a computer, it would have been a Mac. And the theme of the campaign is Think Different. It's the people, honoring the people who think different and who move this world forward. And it is what we are about. It touches the soul of this company. So I'm going to go ahead and roll it, and I hope that you feel the same way about it I do.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.